Hello everyone, welcome to Bargain Gaming, where we can play excellent games without busting our wallets. This is episode 301. Wow, 301 of Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition. We are... What is this place over here? What is this asking for? Oh, that is the flux. Well, I guess this episode, this series has gone on long enough. For me, I can continue to play this game another 300 episodes. In fact, I have played more episodes than that. I've done a lot more offline episodes. This game is totally fascinating to me. But there are more games out there. There are a lot different games out there that are waiting to be played, and I think you guys would also want to move on. So it's not that I want to move on, but half I want to move on, half I don't want to move on. But we need to move on. We need to conclude this game. Anyway, will be saved on my PS4, so I can always, the save games are always there. I can always go and play them again. So anyway, so I guess we have to move on. We're at 301 episodes. So to move on, we have to really decide on which faction we need to align ourselves with. Again, just a brief recap: there is the Railroad faction. They helped since get a new life. There is the Brotherhood of Steel faction. They are almost like an invasive force. They came in here. They start to collect all the technology available in the area, and they collect technology only for themselves. We were able to get part of our first suit of armor, our T60 armor, from them only because we joined them. But before we joined them, we were tested by Paladin Dance to do a number of missions with him, and it was only because we proved ourselves useful. So that is why, if we are not useful to the Paladin, to the Brotherhood of Steel, they will not take us in, and they don't give things out freely. So we actually had to earn it. So they are like an invasive force that came into the Commonwealth, and they are soaking up technology. Then there is the Minuteman. The Minuteman is the very first group of people we met, and actually the Minuteman is already gone. Our avatar was the only one that was able to resurrect the Minutemen. And ultimately, you have the Institute. The Institute has proven to be the most advanced group in the Commonwealth, and in fact, they have influences far out of the Commonwealth, as we have seen in Fallout 3. And they also, their story is actually one of the most, for me, of the four groups, the Institute story is actually one of the most impressive for me so far. Then we go into the current situation of the world. The current world situation, at least in the universe of Fallout, is that the mantra they say is that war never changes. I would go one step further. I would say human beings never change. Human beings are always me, myself, my clan, my country, then everybody else. So, and most people in reality, they only care about themselves and a job that will provide reasonable income, that will give them a reasonable degree of comfort for themselves, and hopefully a family. And then everything else outside of that is secondary. It becomes, what happens outside of that, the small picture is myself and my family, and then the big picture is the world outside the family. So the world or outside the family, it becomes relevant only in how it affects my family. And so people that's why we have rules that keep us in place, because or keep us civilized, keep us behaving in a civilized manner. Without rules, then it is the survival of the fittest. Strength, claws, fangs win. And in the world, in the universe of Warcraft, not Warcraft, Fallout, the survival of the fittest, the rule of strength, claw, and fang rules, meaning, uh, and that's why out of the four factions, the Minuteman represents our current, to a certain extent, is a reflection of American, Western culture, and especially American culture, in a sense that it is a confederation of settlements who help each other out in terms of when need arise, and but they all run their own settlements, and they try to help each other, and then but it's independent settlements grow independently. And so that is, for me, that was my biggest attraction right at the start, was that it reflects a big portion of American culture, and therefore I might it was very attractive to me, and that is why we actually helped resurrect the settlements and the Minutemen, and we happened to get promoted to general. So, but again, it shows that it is because of our avatar's strength and ability and leadership that the Minuteman was resurrected. Because the idea itself is still required a great deal of strength, iron fist, willingness to kill monsters like super mutants and raiders are always out there. There will always be super mutants and raiders out there in some form or another, be it in human beings or in actual animals or actual world events. And so a lot of strength and discipline is actually necessary, even for the Minutemen to survive. So they actually failed. They actually died. The group actually died, and we personally revived it. So it's because of our strength. So they represent a culture we're familiar with, and that is why I migrated to it very early. But again, I realized that in the universe of Fallout, it will not work if we were not there. So, and then the railroad is very, what do you call this, is has very high goals, has very high ideals, and everything is fair to a certain extent. But then there is no consequence. They do not think through what they do. And let's say they help free the synths, which they believe are slaves, and then they gave them a new personality and then let them go. Do not shelter them. Do not give them a structure within which to contribute to the society, to this society. And so the that kind of irresponsibility led to the Libertalia thing, that a synth can actually become a major scary warlord of raiders. And so the railroad is too idealistic, and in its idealism it is not responsible. And so they do not, if something like say some if a synth, because since those the high level synths are very smart, are very strong, they're like a Superman. And we've seen that, like in Kellogg and in the Coursers, and that the synth institute let loose on their own sins. And so they are very powerful creations. And so it is really irresponsible to just give them a new personality, change their mind, and then let them just run loose. And so, and if something like that, like Libertalia happens, Railroad didn't do anything to retrieve the synth or do something about it. So that's not good either. So the Railroad is not I do not believe in that kind of idealism with lack of responsibility. So that is not a faction I would support. Now, the Brotherhood of Steel would be close because they represent a lot of strength. They represent organization, but they're just a step above the Gunners. The Gunners are totally corrupt, right? They have no morals. The Brotherhood of Steel have their own morality, but the morality is very factionalism. It doesn't embrace everybody. It only embraces what their ideals are, and their ideals are more like they can tend to be very fascistic, and so that is not a good ideal too. So though it brings us all the way back down to the institute. The institute. Remember the story that Sean was telling us that the institute were the remnants from the Commonwealth Institute of Technology. They started off as everybody else on the surface world. The people that were in vaults were actually way ahead of them because they did not suffer as much. But the ancestors of the institute people, they actually suffered as much as any people on the surface. What they actually were able to do, they had the discipline to come together, dedicate their resources, dig into the ground, and develop it into a society, into a culture, into a community that is much more advanced than the day that bombs fell. So there is something in this that is talks about. Again, it reflects the strength uh, and the determination and persistence, and it demonstrates a level of ability way beyond that's really very no, it's beyond respectable. It is just amazing that they were able to do that and not lord it over the surface world. They could have, but they did not. What they have been doing is really just setting out feelers. And what happened in Nuka World, no, not Nuka World, but in Far Harbor, demonstrates that humankind among us humans, there will always be a certain portion that is discriminatory. There's always a portion that is very aggressive. There's always a portion that is very suspicious. You know, like the confessor Pectus is very suspicious and wants to dominate and wants to. You know, there's zealots. There will always be zealots. And then on the part of the Far Harbor people, there are also people like Alan. They're very isolationist, and they are also very discriminatory. So that is always going to be present in certain segments of the population. Most of the population will be generally categorized as, like the herd mentality. They're like sheep, which I said earlier before, is that, if we have most people, if they have a relatively level, comfortable life, their family is good, and they have they can do what they want. The big picture, they're not too much concerned about the big picture, and then therefore they are, and a lot of politicians, even in today's in our current environment, there's a lot of bigotry, there's a lot of discrimination, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot, and this is modern America, and we still have that. So, and then and we have laws that actually try to mitigate this. But so if you put it in the universe of the Fallout universe, this just gets really highlighted, becomes very significant, and Far Harbor really clearly illustrates that. And therefore, like say, if you have like a shadowy hand that Dima has, so what we have done is, in fact, it would have been resulted in the death of the Atoms believers or the death of Far Harbor. But because of Dima's and our intervention, the two groups are now starting to work together. There's more, and so there is and again, that is that is a synth that was able to do that. And the Institute represents the bigger picture for the Commonwealth and possibly for the whole of the United States and possibly for the whole universe of Fallout. Because the world outside of the United States is still unknown. We only know certain aspects, like we've been to, this is Massachusetts. Earlier we were in Washington, D.C. That was Fallout 3. And then we had Las Vegas. And then I think upcoming will be Florida, Miami, and excuse me. So all of those things considered, so I believe the Institute can do what DEMA did for Far Harbor. If there is, so the Institute represents a lot of potential strength, a lot of potential technology. Not potential, they are real. It's in there. They have the synth that can work for them, that can actually do 24 hours. In a way, they are slaves. They're robots, but their level of participation can actually be integrated into the Institute's life over time if somebody's willing to do that. And I believe it can profit from a benign dictator position. So if Sean, we can work with Sean and over time get Sean to become a benign dictator, because the Institute is definitely a dictatorship. And then finally, my final argument is this, is that aside from the human beings, we have to consider in this world, they call them the Zetans, the aliens. In Fallout 3, we encountered the Zetans. In Fallout 4, we came across their ship, and we were able to get an alien blaster. So apparently, and then the Hubologists also have encountered Zetans, and that was like 200 years ago, when the ancestor of that lady gave us Hub's alien blaster. So that means the Zetans have been keeping a close eye on our world. And the other thing that piqued my interest was that how easily can we convert the alien blaster to a fusion-based energy weapon with very little loss in lethality. So from 120 damage to 110. So that means, at least on the energy usage form, we are just a few years behind the Zetans. We're not too far behind in terms of technology. Maybe on the spacefaring side, we might be like centuries away, but in terms of energy usage, we are not very far from them. We're not very far behind them. And it is very possible that since they have been, again, this is now a paranoia talking here, or so that they have kept this world under observation for a very long time, and they have seen that we have now progressed to the point that we're almost par with them. They could have actually instigated people like what the Institute did. It shouldn't be. It should be within their capability also to have, maybe they're already Institute since in our midst, and that started the war in the nuclear war in 2077. So if we don't get our act together, we might find ourselves with alien overlords very quickly. So that is my final argument, that the Institute needs to control the environment, needs to be in charge, needs to take over, needs to be the benign dictator, so that human beings will not suddenly find themselves the slaves of alien overlords. Okay, and finally, the final point that I have is that Lorenzo Cabot have given us the ability to be immortal. So that means, the problem with dictatorships and monarchies is that if we look at history, we have seen that empires are built by very strong, very good, very egalitarian, very forward-thinking people. people, and they create an empire. But when they die, it's their kids, their grandkids, their that destroys the empire. They become corrupt. So in this case, if we have that immortality, we can actually keep control of the institute. We can be its hopefully maintain our moral compass and continue. Remember, we have the culture before the war, so we know what good is, what bad is, or at least we have a better, clearer definition of it. Whether that's correct or not, we have a clear definition of it, and we can start to slowly integrate that together with the advancement that the institute represent to the rest of the Commonwealth, and then from the rest of the Commonwealth to the rest of the other states, and then from the rest of the United States to the rest of the world. So that is something we can do, and because we are immortal, and then with the power of the institute, ultimately the power of the institute can actually work with Lorenzo Cabot to actually study the relic that he has on his head and find out what the things why is it causing him to be that way. So that must be from either a more ancient civilization than ours, meaning our ancestors that we have forgotten, or maybe alien, I don't know, but we can learn from that. That's one. Number two is that Sean, by the time we found him, is already 60 plus years old. When he was kidnapped from us, he was just an infant, barely a year old. And the one who kidnapped him from us was Kellogg. When we found him, we found that Kellogg has not aged a year, even. He still looks the same. So that means the Institute actually has a life enhancement ability already. And so that is another thing we can offer the populace, the whole humankind. Imagine now people living beyond, except maybe if they're killed by accident or murdered or a disease that the Institute doesn't know about yet, that they cannot fight yet. But a normal lifespan can be in the span of over 100, 200 years old. That is something we can offer to the rest of the human race. And that is actually a good deal, a good way of repopulating the world. And with the advancement that we have the fallen spaceship that we can look at. We can reverse engineer. The space is actually not too far away from our grasp. And if the Zetans actually challenge us, it makes even more sense that the Institute has to be the guardian, the mover, that the protector for Earth, because they are the most qualified person to be able to fend off the Zetans if they actually have evil intentions against us. Remember, our first encounter with the Zetan was shoot first before they were willing to talk to us. When we approached them, we did not shoot them. They shot at us. So they shot first before talking. Maybe he was threatened. He was hurt. I don't know what's happening. All I know is that we did not shoot first. The Zetan shot first. So that means their culture might not be too far away from human culture, meaning survival of the fittest. And I would rather not bet on their bet that they are well-mannered, egalitarian people. I would rather bet that we are strong enough that if we do meet them and they become adversarial, we can do something about it. If they are egalitarian and very open-minded, then we will not pose a danger to them either. We don't have to be aggressive with them. But if they become aggressive with us, we can do something about it. So all that rambling, in short, that summarizes why my decision in this playthrough is to side with the Institute. I know you guys will have your all kinds of different agreements, disagreement with that. But anyway, so that is my philosophical ramblings to justify why I am siding with the Institute. Anyway, so I guess after all that, uh, we will now we will now perform the tasks given to us by the Institute, and which is wow, okay, which is the long road? No. Cappy? No. Grand Tour? Coloring? No. Where is the price of memory? Shipbreaker, watering hole, open season, precious metals. Why? What happened? I thought we had a mission. Oh, the Battle of Bunker Hill. So we will now highlight this mission because we need. We have made a decision, or at least I have made a decision to side with the Institute. So this is because once this we finish this mission, I think there is no turning back. So with that said, I guess this would be a good place to cut the episode right here. In the next episode, we will be at Bunker Hill, and I believe that will be I have not played that before in my earlier playthrough when I was playing it with in the Xbox, because I never finished the game because I didn't want to pick a side. I was very confused. I didn't want anyway. So right now, since we have to finish the game, that is the side we will pick is the Institute side. Okay, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you will join me in the next episode. Bye.